Hi, a little reminder that we are live on Twitch every Friday and Sunday evening at 8 p.m. Greek hour. So don't hesitate to join us for cozy streams. Thank you, and I let you with the video.
Right now. Let's start reading. Okay. Let's go. The Black Archives, Case 3, Dead Sunflowers. Flowers are magnificent plants, 1,000 different colors and shapes, but not all flowers are peaceful and beautiful. Some can be dangerous, even deadly, and some should never be touched. This was the case with the sunflowers of Mount Aconcagua. Aconcagua? Yeah, I think it's this. This mountain was famous among hikers and tourists, but it held a secret that no one knew. The only ones who had discovered it never returned. In an early inaccessible corner of the mountain, where hikers never went, lay a bed of bright yellow sunflowers. They had been there as long as the mountain itself, wild, untouched, and mostly in the shade. Their unique characteristic was that they didn't need the sun to live and flourish. Anyway, their source of energy lay elsewhere, a much more macabre and dark source. The flowers fed on humans, absorbing them and then taking on their faces. The unspoken rule was to absolutely avoid touching them, as they remained harmless until touched. They could, however, use their victims' faces to lure others. It was only a matter of time after that. Many hikers had fallen into the trap, those who hadn't had the decency to stay on the trails. The very first was an unfortunate soul who had simply tripped and tumbled a few meters down the mountainside, right into the flower bed. The sunflowers had devoured his unconscious body. His face had been the first of many, and Jordan was about to see the others, whether he liked it or not. He was an ordinary university student, athletic and sociable. To celebrate his graduation, he had decided to organize a trip to Argentina. On his agenda, tasting local food, visiting touristic sites, strolling through the streets, and hiking Mount Aconcagua. This trip was for personal reasons, so he went alone. With nothing but a huge backpack and his phone, he traveled to Argentina, where he was discovering a whole new culture. He spent several days exploring, visiting the most popular tourist spots, and meeting locals. All of this came easily to Jordan, the stereotypical extrovert who got along with everyone. One evening, while relaxing in a bar, Jordan struck up a conversation with a group of locals. A few men in their 50s, laborers having a drink after work to unwind after a long day. They were welcoming, warm, and friendly. As the conversation flowed, he eventually mentioned his plan to hike Mount Aconcagua. This information raised a frown in one of the men. "Are you planning to go alone?" he asked. Jordan nodded while the others exchanged worried glances. "You should at least have a guide, a professional who knows the mountain and its trails," one of them advised. Jordan shrugged. "I'm sure I will be fine if I stick to the trail," he said nonchalantly. "Do you have any idea how many people disappear in this mountain every year? Tourists who think they don't need a guide." Jordan considered the warning but wasn't about to change his plans. He wanted to climb the mountain on his own alone. "I will think about it," he simply replied to avoid further comment. After his evening at the bar, he returned to his hotel. He wasn't planning on hiring a guide to climb the mountain, but that didn't mean he was going to embark on this hike unprepared. He already had maps, of the different trails so he could find his way once he was up there. He had also packed a compass, several bottles of water, food, and sturdy shoes. Nothing could go wrong, right? On the day of the hike, he gathered everything he needed in his large backpack and took the bus to the foot of the mountain. He barely arrived before he'd already pulled out his phone to take pictures. The mountain was magnificent. Its base was surrounded by greenery, a few flowers. Where was I? I lost myself. Its base was surrounded by greenery, a few flowers, and a lake whose crystal clear water looked incredibly pure. Closer to the summit, a blanket of snow covered the rock. As he surveyed his surroundings, Jordan spotted groups of hikers following their guides. He decided to follow them along the trail for the time being, his eyes examining every rock, every bush. In truth, he wasn't there by chance. He had chosen Mount Aconcagua for a good reason. His brother Adrian. Several months earlier, his brother had also come to Argentina. It was supposed to last 2 weeks, but he never came home. Jordan waited for him outside the door, hoping to see him magically appear, but the street remained empty. He called 1,000 times, but never received an answer. The police were called and investigated the disappearance, but they couldn't find him. No sign of him anywhere. Since Adrian has told his little brother he planned to climb the Mount Aconcagua, Jordan did some research on the area. He found numerous stories of disappearance and tourists who had gotten lost there and only been found several days later. Naturally, he informed the police, who immediately launched a search of the mountain. The search yielded no conclusive results. Yet Jordan was certain his brother was trapped somewhere on that mountain. There was very little chance he was still alive, given that he had been missing for several months, but Jordan held on to hope. He wanted to believe and refused to give up until he found his brother, or what was left of him. He couldn't live with all the questions swirling in his mind about his disappearance. He needed answers, good or bad. So he followed the hikers, his mind focused on finding any trace of his brother's presence. He wasn't entirely sure what he was doing, but hope kept him going no matter what. So he continued relentless search. After what seemed like an eternity of fruitless searching, Jordan finally abandoned the trail and ventured where no hiker would go. Perhaps even where the police hadn't. He plunged into the untrodden undergrowth. He was aware of the danger, but too determined to turn back. Rock after rock, bush after bush, he pressed on, aimless. Unsurprisingly, Jordan quickly got lost. The trail was far behind him, too far for him to find again. Everything began to look the same until the greenery became increasingly dominant, to the point where he no longer even recognized the mountain. The landscape bore little resemblance to what he had seen just moments before. So Jordan took out his compass, relieved he'd thought to bring one. However, the device wasn't much help, as the needle simply spun around endlessly. The young man sighed. Just his luck to find himself with a compass that suddenly stopped working while he was lost in the mountains. Undeterred, he continued aimlessly, praying he would stumble upon the trail again. An hour passed, during which he only sank deeper into the unknown. Suddenly, he heard voices, faint and distant. He stopped walking immediately to listen intently. He could hear them. The voices were a little further ahead. Thinking it was a group of hikers, he hurried to join them before they got too far away, and he found himself alone and he found himself alone once again. To his surprise, when he reached the place from which the voices were coming, he didn't find a group of hikers at all. Instead, he found himself in front of a field of sunflowers. He stared at them without moving for a long moment, breathless. The sight was deeply unsettling. The sun was high in the sky, illuminating them, and yet the sunflowers had their backs to him. On the contrary, they all faced Jordan. Each flower had a face on the center of its petals, with empty eyes. The plants swayed slowly in the wind, in a silent and oppressive atmosphere that left Jordan speechless. After a long hesitation, and driven by curiosity, he approached the sunflowers. With each step, the plant's head turned to follow him, amplifying his unease. "What is this?" Jordan mused aloud, studying the plants with equal part curiosity and disgust. He bent down in front of one of the plants with a female face. It was so unreal. A face clinging to a plant. How was it even possible? He slowly reached out toward the face, as if touch could confirm its reality. The face's mouth suddenly opened. "You can touch me, there is no need to be afraid." A deceptively gentle voice resonated. The unexpected and bizarre action startled Jordan. His hand froze before he could touch the face, and he quickly recoiled, his eyes wide with astonishment. "It can talk," he breathed. He scanned the sunflowers. There must be at least 30. That's when one of the faces caught his eye, freezing him in place. "Adrian?" He moved closer to the flower, breathless. Once he was close enough, he could confirm the uncanny resemblance between the flower's face and that of his missing brother. "What's going on?" he asked into the void. His brother's eyes remained fixed on him. "Jordan?" the face replied. Jordan's heart skipped a bit when he heard his own name spoken in his brother's voice. But this thing couldn't be his brother. Even so, he couldn't help but cling to a faint hope. "Do you remember me?" he asked cautiously. The face of his brother brought a smile to his face that was more frightening than anything else. "Of course I remember my little brother," the plant confirmed. "It's impossible. How can you have my brother's face?" "It's me, Jordan. It really is me," the sunflower insisted. Jordan's eyes scanned the plant from top to bottom. He both refused to believe the vision and desperately wanted to find his brother, even if it was in the form of a strange half-plant creature. "You will have to explain me how this happened," Jordan said after taking a deep breath. "I slipped during my hike and fell into this carpet of plants. I was going to die, and they saved my life by making me one of them," Adrian's face explained. Jordan nodded as if he understood, even though each word made him feel like he was in the middle of a fever dream. Very quickly, the emotions he had repressed deep inside resurfaced. His eyes welled up with tears. "You've been missing for months. The police presumed you dead," he announced, his voice breaking at the last word. His brother's face darkened with sadness. "How is Mom?" Adrian asked. "She prays every night for you to come back and cries every time she sees one of your pictures," Jordan informed him. Adrian gave him a sad smile. "I often think about her too, about all of you, actually," he lamented. "I miss you so much. I miss you too." Jordan glanced around, unsure what to do in this situation. He didn't want to stay here, but he didn't want to abandon his brother either, or what was left of his brother. But how could he bring him home in this state? How would their mother react if he brought Adrian back in a flower pot? Would they put him in the living room as a pretty decoration, water him, feed him, or whatever such a creature needed? He teetered on his feet a moment, doubt lingering, but grief was winning against all reason. "I'd like to take you home, to Mom," he offered, trying not to think about what a terrible idea it was. The plant nodded eagerly, a wide smile spreading across Adrian's face. "That's an excellent idea. All you have to do is dig me up and bring me home," Adrian agreed without hesitation. Okay. Jordan considered for a moment how to proceed, his hand moving hesitantly in the air under the crushing gazes of the other plants. Finally, he began digging at the base of the plant with his hands. But the moment his hands made contact with the flower's roots, a cry of surprise and pain escaped him. The roots had moved of their own accord, wrapping themselves around Jordan's hand and arm. Sharp thorns were scattered along the roots, tightening their grip on Jordan more and more. The thorns dug into his skin, cutting relentlessly until drops of blood fell. Jordan tried to wriggle free, but it only made things worse. The roots tightened with every movement. "What's happening?" he shouted in his brother's face, panic evident in his voice. Adrian's face stared at him with hungry eyes. "Sorry, brother, but I need this to survive. We all need this," the plant said. His heart pounding, Jordan looked around and noticed that all the other flowers were turned toward him, staring with the same hungry glint in their eyes. A trap. This plant bearing his brother's face was a trap, and he had fallen right into it, blinded by the grief caused by his brother's disappearance. The roots were climbing up his arm, trapping him a little more each time. Fear finally overcame the pain as the roots infiltrated his skin, spreading through his muscles and blood vessels. Jordan pulled with all his strength to escape, his face contorted with the pain of the movement. "Don't be afraid, Jordan," the plant tried to convince him. "You will just become one of us, and we will be together again. Isn't it what you want?" But it was no use. "You're not my brother," Jordan spat, still struggling against the roots that had invaded his entire forearm. Tears streamed down Jordan's cheeks as he continued to pull at his arm, trying to free himself from the roots as best as he could. A flash of clarity struck his panicked mind. He had a knife in his bag he had prepared thoroughly before starting his hike. He then lifted his backpack from his shoulders and dropped it to the ground. With his free hand, he rummaged through his bag. When his hand closed around the pocket knife at the bottom, he didn't wait another second. He quickly sliced through the roots, eliciting a sharp cry. Okay, thank you, Calvin. A sharp cry from the plant. Just have to know where I am. Okay, let me take a sip. Thank you, because I really need it, actually. Yeah. Oof. Okay. Let's go back. Okay, let's go. Once free from the flower's grip, he moved away as fast as he could to catch his breath and examine his arm. Unfortunately, slicing the roots didn't change much. They continued to spread up his arm and into his body, causing intense pain that even the adrenaline struggled to alleviate. "It's too late now, you can't escape. Once you touch one of us, you inevitably become like us, whether you flee or stay," Adrian's face informed him. The roots had now reached his shoulder. He couldn't even feel his arm, which seemed paralyzed. The reality of the situation hit him like a hammer blow. It was too late. He wouldn't be able to go home to his mother, who had already lost one son and was about to lose another. He regretted everything. The fact that he hadn't been able to grieve sooner, the decision to make this trip, to climb this cursed mountain alone, the foolish hope he'd had of bringing the flower-bearing Adrian's face home, just to have his presence with him again. He should have stayed with his mother to help her, comfort her, and support her through this terrible ordeal. Instead, he'd left her alone to make his trip, because he was too stubborn to admit that the police had done everything in their power. All because he'd refused to accept that his brother was gone. But today, seeing this floral creation bearing his brother's face like a decoration, he realized the truth. This thing wasn't and had never been his brother. His brother had died months ago and would never return, and Jordan would soon suffer the same fate. But before that, he wanted to stop this creature from further tarnishing his brother's memory. He had to do it before it was too late. The roots were beginning to spread down his torso, making movement increasingly difficult. He could feel his body gradually going numb. An idea took root in his mind, a sad and radical one. His eyes fell on his backpack, still lying on the ground among the flowers whose roots had become entangled in it. He took a deep breath and began to pull the roots from his bag, inevitably touching them in the process. But he didn't care about the roots. At that moment, his attention was solely focused on the lighter in one of the backpack's pockets. Meanwhile, the roots that had spread across the ground began to climb up his sneakers. They dug into his ankles, and as he reached for the lighter, when he tried to stand, the pain from the digging roots forced him back down with a cry of agony. The plants were becoming increasingly aggressive and ravenous, the roots climbing and cutting faster, pinning him to the ground. He was on his knees, unable to move his paralyzed legs, feeling the roots invade his body beneath his skin. But at least he had the lighter in his hand and was ready to finally mourn his brother for good. He cast one last look at his brother's face and then lit the lighter. "I should have accepted your death long ago. Goodbye, Adrian," he said. He then placed the flame against the base of the flower under the panicked gaze of the face that mimicked his brother's. "Wait, don't do that, please," Adrian begged. Jordan ignored him and let the lighter's flame spread along the flower, burning it quite easily. The creature let out an inhuman, high-pitched scream that echoed through the silence of the mountain. The fire quickly took hold and grew thanks to the dry grass, destroying sunflower after sunflower, the cries echoing one after another. The fire spread so fast that it became visible for miles. The authorities were quickly called to intervene before hikers could be caught and trapped by the flame in the mountain. Trapped amidst the flowers, Jordan lay on the ground immobilized. The roots that had engulfed his body had caught fire, burning him as well. He was still alive but unsure if he could last much longer in this state. He was weak, his body partially burned and still in the heart of the blaze. Fortunately, rescuers arrived in no time to extinguish the flames. When they came upon Jordan's body, they froze for a moment at the sight. His skin was covered in lines, a gigantic network of burns left by the roots. Using an helicopter, they transported Jordan's unconscious body to the nearest hospital. He was admitted in critical condition. After a lengthy operation, he was finally declared out of critical condition. His mother traveled there in just one day, arriving at his bedside while he was still unconscious and in remission. It took Jordan several days to slowly regain consciousness. He was disoriented, his vision blurry, and his mind clouded. He was surprised to still be alive, though he could hardly believe it. He remained groggy for a long time before his eyes fell on his mother, who was asleep in a chair near the bed. "Mom," he whispered, his voice hoarse and exhausted. His mother jumped, waking instantly to take his hand, her eyes filled with concern. "Jordan, you're finally awake. How are you feeling? What happened?" she asked, looking him up and down. Seeing his mother's concern, he hesitated. Should he tell her about Adrian? About what had happened? Would she even believe him? Probably not. So he decided to keep quiet about it. "I got lost and made the mistake of lighting my lighter and dropping it. It was stupid," he explained vaguely. "I was so scared. I've already lost a son. I couldn't bear to lose you too," his mother said, tears welling in her eyes. Guilt overwhelmed Jordan enough to make him promise himself he would never do anything like that again. The hospital kept Jordan under observation for weeks, while his burns healed enough that he would no longer be in danger once he was discharged. He would bear the scars of the grooves that crisscrossed his body for life, the reminder of the roots that had imprisoned him in the mountain. He would have to see them every day and live with them. At least he had finally mourned his brother for good. He would remember Adrian when he was still human, not the creature he had become. Jordan was relieved to have survived and thought this ordeal was behind him, and unfortunately, he was wrong about that last point. The doctors had managed to treat his burns, but hadn't noticed that one of the roots had implanted a seed in Jordan's arm before dying in the flames. And that seed had already begun to germinate and spread thin roots throughout the young man's body. He only realized it a few days later when he woke up in the middle of the night with a cry of pain. One of the new roots had pierced the skin of his shoulder. Wide-eyed with panic, he sprinted to the bathroom to look at himself in the mirror. In his panic, he tried to pull it out, but the root was too deeply embedded in his body and refused to budge. Jordan felt helpless and didn't know how to get rid of the parasitic plant. He couldn't tell his mother because he didn't want to worry her even more, and he had no way to make it disappear. In his misfortune, he was lucky that the seed was too small to transform him into a sunflower, but it was still there. Within a few hours, it had already invaded a large part of Jordan's arm, so much so that he couldn't move it. He was paralyzed again. After a while, his entire arm was covered in roots, and small leaves had even sprouted. Jordan was left with a plant-like arm he couldn't do anything about, but at least this plant was harmless. Well, harmless to Jordan anyway. The same couldn't be said for others. After much effort, Jordan had managed to regain enough mobility in his arm to use it daily, but sometimes the limb acted on its own. One day, Jordan was walking in a park to get some fresh air when a bird flew near him. Suddenly, as if by reflex, his plant-like arm grabbed the bird with incredible speed. He tried to open the hand that was holding the animal tightly, but his own arm wouldn't obey. In a few seconds, the bird was covered in roots and then absorbed into his arm. At first in shock, Jordan froze. Then he felt a wave of energy wash over him. He felt strangely stronger. Was it because his arm had absorbed the bird? Had he become partly like the plants he had burned? Out of curiosity, he tried the experiment again, a little later on a rabbit. Once again, he felt that wave of energy flow through him, such a satisfying sensation, like a shot of dopamine. Something easy to become addicted to. So Jordan continued to absorb life after life, year after year. He was unable to stop himself. He had started with small animals, but as with any addiction, he always needed more. So he moved on from small animals to pets, and then, after several years of hesitation, to humans. Astonishingly, he had stopped aging since he began taking lives. He saw the years go by, but he remained frozen at the same age and with the same appearance. He had seen his friend age change, his mother die. He had become an immortal being, at least as long as he continued to absorb lives. And that's what he did. He couldn't help himself. He had abandoned animals to focus on humans. Over time, he had racked up victims to the point of becoming the most notorious serial killer in the world, without anyone ever knowing his identity. No one knew anything about him, and since he left no trace, no leads had ever been able to trace him. Yet the disappearances kept coming, too quickly for the police to be mere coincidence. Jordan wandered the world, absorbing life after life without being able to stop. He had felt guilty at first. He had hated himself. Then addiction and dopamine had overtaken his remorse, and over the years he had forgotten how to feel anything at all. All that remained was this insatiable hunger. More lives, more energy, more dopamine, and even more years to live. He may have succeeded in destroying the sunflowers, but in doing so, he had given them the best opportunity in the world, the opportunity to evolve. And he was the very product of that evolution, capable of thinking, moving, and blending into a crowd without arousing suspicions, the perfect killer. And this is the end. Bro has animal I have become and my demons on repeat. There we go, this is the end. This was the dead sunflower, the case 3 of the stories.